When starting a new adventure, players get to choose what types of weapons their characters will wield. Some players might pick weapons that fit their character in a more of a role-playing type of way, while others might be trying to find out which weapon helps them deal the most damage. And that's what we're going to go over today. We're going to pick the top 10 mundane weapons in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. There are 37 mundane weapons in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, 38 if you count your fists. But not all of them are created equally. I'm looking at you, Blowgun. So how do you go about deciding which ones to pick at level 1? We're going to be considering a few metrics when narrowing down our list. The first is damage output of the weapon. Second is the properties, things such as reach or heavy. Third is cost. Instead of starting equipment, some players take the allotted gold option instead. This metric becomes a big consideration when starting like that. And fourth is the weight of the weapon. Nah, just kidding. No one actually cares about the weight. Weapons can be broken down into two categories. You have simple and martial. A simple weapon is something like a sickle or maybe a club, and a martial weapon would be more of a long sword. And so, with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and take a look at our top 10 mundane weapons. At number 10, we have the Dagger. The Dagger lands on this list for a few reasons. First, it's an iconic weapon that's often paired with the likes of thieves and assassins. It's so closely linked to subterfuge, in fact, that it even spurned the expression cloak and dagger. Its damage is a measly 1d4 piercing damage, but the weapon makes up for this in versatility. The dagger has three properties: finesse, light, and thrown. Finesse allows you to use your dexterity modifier for attacks and damage rolls. Light allows you to use the weapon in two-handed fighting, and range means you can throw it and still maintain the weapon's attack and damage stats that you would have normally when you're stabbing somebody. The dagger is also a bargain bin weapon, costing only 2 gold pieces. It's the perfect side weapon to bring into battle, or a main weapon when being sneaky. I know it's weak, but just like in my D&D games, I'm going with the rule of cool here and giving it a spot on this list at number 10. Thrusting into the 9th spot is the spear. The spear is a simple yet effective weapon. One of its properties, versatile, can change the amount of damage the weapon does based on how the character is wielding it. If held in one hand, the spear can do 1d6 piercing damage. If held in two hands, it does 1d8. It can also be thrown, making it very useful against some of those pesky flying creatures and even levitating spellcasters. The spear is also cheaper than the dagger, selling for a paltry 1 gold piece. Though I'm sure you can convince a merchant to simply just give it to you with a high enough charisma roll. Hitting the 8th spot is the short bow. This is our first ranged weapon, and it's a pretty good one. It's one of the best hunting weapons there is, and you'll rarely spot a ranger or scout without one slung over the shoulder. It can shoot accurately up to 80 feet away, and it can still be shot up to 320 feet with disadvantage. It deals 1d6 piercing damage, and uses arrows as its ammunition. It's also considered a two-handed weapon since you need a free hand to draw an arrow as part of your attack action. Even though it's a simple weapon, it's much harder to craft than just spears or daggers. Highly skilled bowers are often sought out for their mastery in making such weapons. As a result of this, the weapon is a hefty 25 gold pieces, so get ready to invest. Now, for all of you well-off nobles and charlatans out there laughing at that small, paltry price, just keep in mind that most unskilled workers in Dungeons & Dragons only make around 2 silver pieces per day, not including their expenses. So for many, it would take several months of hard work in order for them to afford a short bow. However, the price is well worth it. 7th on this list is the Warhammer and Battle Axe. I know, I'm squeezing 2 weapons into one spot, but the truth is they're really the same weapon, just each has a different skin. Well, mostly. Both have the versatile property. That property allows each weapon to do either 1d8 damage while being wielded in one hand, or 1d10 damage while in 2 hands. However, they differ in regards to the types of damage they deal. The Warhammer deals bludgeoning damage, while the Battle Axe deals slashing damage. In terms of cost, they're close. The Battle Axe is cheaper, costing only 10 gold pieces compared to the Warhammer's 25 gold piece cost. You really can't go wrong with either. They're both great damage dealers and can be used with or without a shield. All you have to ask yourself is, do you want to smash things or slash things? Piercing and slashing their way into number 6 are the Pike and Glaive. Yes, I did it again, but just like the last entry on the list, these two are almost the exact same. Each of these weapons deals an impressive 1d10 damage, though the glaive deals slashing damage and the pike deals piercing damage. They're both heavy weapons, meaning small-sized creatures will have disadvantage if they try to wield them. Each weapon also requires 2 hands to use, and have the reach property, which allows them to reach up to 10 feet instead of the usual 5. If you want to have some real fun, you can make a Bugbear character. A Bugbear has a racial ability which gives them 5 feet of additional reach. If you pair them with a glaive or a pike, that's going to bring their total melee range up to 15 feet. And then if you add something like the Sentinel feat later on, you're going to give your Dungeon Master nightmares before every encounter they plan for your group. It's a lot of fun, trust me. Due to their size, these weapons work great at intimidating foes, or make for an impressive conversation piece when you're at a tavern. As far as cost goes, a glaive will run you about 20 gold pieces, while a pike is much more affordable, only costing 5 gold pieces. One thing to note is I was going to toss the halberd on this list as well, but that is actually the exact same thing as the glaive. They're both just swords and axes on a stick. They have the same exact cost, and both do slashing damage with 10 feet of range. Firing into number 5 is the heavy crossbow. This is a martial ranged weapon that's typically used in sieges or for guarding a settlement's walls. It's also an iconic weapon for slaying vampires and other types of undead. This weapon earns its spot for having a high damage output of 1d10 piercing, and for being a long-range weapon that can take out targets from a safe distance. It has quite a few properties to be aware of. First, its ammunition is bolts. Secondly, it's a heavy, two-handed weapon, making it less ideal for small-sized creatures. Because of this, it also requires the loading property, which restricts how much damage you can deal in one turn. Loading makes it so you can only fire the crossbow once per turn, regardless if you have an extra attack or not. The heavy crossbow's range is pretty great, however, and it can fire accurately up to 100 feet, and with disadvantage up to 400 feet. You might want to look for a used crossbow to buy, however, since they're quite expensive at 50 gold pieces each. Hitting the bullseye at number 4 is the Longbow. This is the ultimate hunting weapon, and I'm not just talking about hunting deer. The Longbow is perfectly designed to take down even the mightiest of foes, and able to do so quietly and from a safe distance. It deals a modest 1d8 piercing damage, putting it beneath the previous crossbow entry in terms of damage per shot. But unlike the heavy crossbow, it doesn't require loading, which increases its potential damage output per turn later on with features like extra attack. The Longbow's range is more impressive than its crossbow counterpart as well. It can shoot up to 150 feet accurately and up to 600 feet with disadvantage. Just like the short bow, it does have the ammunition and two-handed property, since you have to load an arrow as part of the attack action. However, the longbow is a heavy weapon, making it an unattractive option to our smaller sharpshooter friends. Because of the craftsmanship that goes into making such a fine weapon, the price of a longbow is a steep 50 gold pieces. So you better start saving up, or you might have to make friends with that weird ranger that lives on the edge of town in hopes that they might lend you one of their spare bows. Chopping the competition off at number 3, we have the Great Axe. Whether you're role-playing as an executioner or simply want to do a lot of damage, this is the perfect weapon for you. The Great Axe deals an enormous 1d12 slashing damage, making it the only mundane weapon that rolls a d12. The Great Axe is a heavy, two-handed weapon for obvious reasons, though it's not as cumbersome as weapons like the halberd. The price of the weapon is a fair 30 gold pieces, since it takes a fine blacksmith to forge such a large and balanced weapon. The only weakness of this weapon is also its greatest strength. The 1d12 damage is devastating when you roll high on the damage die, but it leaves you feeling empty when you roll only a 1 or a 2. And it's for that exact reason that the Great Axe cannot break in to the top 2 on our list. Now coming in at number 2 on the list, but possibly number 1 in my heart, we have the Greatsword. This was a hard decision to make. The Greatsword was very close to making to number 1, but it didn't quite beat out the top weapon on our list. Despite all that, this is a classic weapon that's seen in the hands of some of the most legendary heroes in history. Nothing draws the attention of onlookers quite like a large, well-polished greatsword. When you sit down at a tavern and rest the weapon on the chair next to you, the bartender will usually bring drinks out for the both of you. That's the type of respect this baby demands. This weapon can tear through mostly anything, and deals an immense 2d6 slashing damage. Its size makes it a heavy, two-handed weapon, so you're going to have a lot of fun carving through groups of enemies like a farmer harvesting their crop. A minor setback is the steep price of 50 gold pieces, though it's a small price to pay based on how many rewards you'll reap from buying such a badass weapon. And finally, pulverizing everyone as the number 1 mundane weapon on the list, we have the Maul. The maul is a beefier version of the Warhammer. It can smash heads like watermelons and turn bone into fine powder. No, seriously, this thing can hit like a Mike Tyson hook. It deals a crushing 2d6 bludgeoning damage, which is an average of 7.3 damage per hit. When you compare that to the Warhammer's average of 4.3 damage or 5.4 when using two hands, it still isn't close. This mighty weapon even outperforms the Great Axe's 6.7 average damage, and equals the same power as the Greatsword. It's a heavy, two-handed weapon due to its size, so you don't have to worry about creatures like goblins swinging these things at you. This massive hammer is a frightful sight to behold, and anyone who witnesses you caving in some dude's chest like Robert Baratheon is going to think twice before coming near you. Now the main reason that this weapon beat out the Greatsword is simple. It's due to cost. The Greatsword costs 50 gold pieces, which isn't bad considering the type of weapon you're buying. But in comparison, the maul is only 10 gold pieces, so you're saving 40 gold, and you're still getting the same bang for your buck. Well, I guess in this case, it would be the same smash for your buck. And that concludes my top 10 list of the best mundane weapons in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. All in all, the best weapon is the one that fits you and your character. Do you agree with my list? What weapons would you add or remove? Let me know in the comments section below. If you enjoy videos like this, then please drop a like, and also subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes. I also want to give a big thank you to my patrons over on Patreon, whose encouragement and support help make this video possible. If you would like to support me and join the Patreon family, then please click on the link in the description below. And until next time, thank you so much, and I'll see you all in the next one.